what was your motivation for coming back? And I mean, you were literally maybe 5 to 7 words in before the space cut off.
Okay, that's fair. The quickest answer is I actually missed a lot of the members that I had developed a really cool relationship over, pre-Hex, launch, the adoption amplifier. I mean, I was around even before that even launched. And so a lot of the community members I'd kept in touch with, like Kyler and Lit and RG3 and several people, and Steve, obviously. Steve lives here near me, and I see Steve constantly all the time. And we do dinner once a week where we sit down and talk everything cryptographic and what's the state of the network, Pulsechain Pulsex, what's the latest news, who's coming out, who's emerging, who's disrupting, hey, who's like, I'm never going to be interested in coming out with my own token and selling it. So it's just not my thing. And but I'm always gonna want to keep expanding. My resolve to hold is great. Yeah, you could cash out and go on your merry way, but I do pretty well, and I'd prefer to just move into more and more validators as the. I mean, imagine if you had been at the start of excuse me, my apology, Ethereum, and gotten into the various pools, the whatever validation protocols. I don't mess with Ethereum, so I'm going to just want to keep expanding. There's a proper way to do things. It's not to build the network up. The community and the network has been through a tremendous. I mean, how long we've all been waiting for this. I mean, we first phase one of the network was not even working. He had to redo everything. Obviously forked Ethereum, put that out, and now we've been through the whole. So my opinion is the community has waited. It's been very patient, but it's the community's turn at this point, and it's not my job to liquidate my positions on the back of other people. I don't. You can do pretty well in liquidity pools and validators where you should be all set. So, bottom line is I needed to contribute more to the network. Somewhat bored. Let's be honest. I don't miss the controversy, but I do miss the good people. There's a lot of really cool people, and I really enjoyed those relationships.
Well, I hope a lot of
Hey,
those cool people decide to come back, because I'll tell you straight up, it's not just Pulsechain. I think a lot of people are just bored of crypto in general. Um, but I just want to point out this real quick thing about, like, put a bow on the Clio thing is, like, you have someone on the stage right now that has so much more vested and at stake, at risk on Pulsechain than Clio could ever even imagine having. And you don't see him taking this approach. So, you just have to kind of understand that, things are going as good as they should be going, right? And I think it's up to the community. I think it's a great sign that Rackham, that you chose to, dip your feet back into the frying pan that is Pulsechain right now. And I hope people see that as a really positive sentiment. If I guess if I could ask you, like, one more thing is, so have you heard of Truth Terminal, or have you any interest in, like, this whole, like, agent AI agent blockchain kind of new fad that's been going around? 'Cause I know that's been a bit of a resurgence in interest in crypto recently. Have you checked any of that out yet?
I have not, to be very honest with you. It obviously tell me what I don't know.
Oh, I think it would be cool to just do a different space on it. And I mean, you could host it, or whatever, and just kind of, like, go through a lot of this automation stuff. Because I could tell you the critical missing piece here on Pulse Chain is that we don't have enough of, we don't really have any market making. We don't have, like, we have to work harder than any other chain to get to the same place. Because I brought up the example with Solana. Is you go to Solana, a lot of these things are sort of done for you. I mean, you got essentially some smart people battling $1 billion every 30-day inflation on Solana. Like, that's strategy, that's tactics, a lot of math. We don't really have that on Pulse Chain. So I see, for the future, I think it'd be really great for for people to develop their own AI agents, to do things on to Pulse Chain. And it doesn't have to be like Truth Terminal where you're making posts and doing this kind of stuff. But I really see that the automation that's very affordable now. Like, you could always do this, but it was sort of not cost effective for most people to do. And now it costs costs very little. So yeah, I think it'd be a really interesting topic of like, if we were to design to construct this sort of decentralized market making, anybody's welcome to join kind of deal, like really democratize that aspect of it. Like what would that look like, and how can we build that? And and that way it's we're not centralizing, right? A lot of these protocols where people get wrecked on is like everyone just wants to centralize their money to themselves and then decide what to do with it. So I'm saying, like, what if we just go the other way and just give you the capability of doing it on your own, and you can totally, and it's a more voluntary based system, but you have the tools and like the intelligence of modern sort of market making systems. So anyway, just thought that might be interesting for a topic down the road.
You'll have to, yeah, you and Steve will have to hook that up. It sounds like something I'm going to want to look into from the sounds of it.
All right, I see that King Daniel had his hand up, and then Coach X. Go ahead, King Daniel.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Hey, Rackham, welcome back. I know you probably don't know me, but you're one of my inspiration when I got into Hex, the very first time I got into Hex. I love your style, I love your personality, really. I'm sorry for your personal issues that you have, but know that God's time is the best. I hope you still have your dogs. I just lost my German Shepherd, so kind of thought about your dogs because I think they.
Wow, you remembered that, my Belgian
Yeah,
Malinois. That's a trip. I appreciate you very much for saying
yeah.
that. Believe it or not, that was one of the harshest parts about going through that particular situation. It was that she took all my Belgian
Oh,
Malinois, and that was hard, man, because I raised Masad from a
oh.
pup, and she took Sayeret with her, and so I've got nothing but videos now. And life happens. Don't misunderstand. This isn't a sob story. Life
Yeah.
happens. But it's you have to understand when you go through a divorce. I just it just she took. You don't want to know how much crypto she took. You do not want to ask me that question.
It's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, everything happens for a good reason. I mean, I think, I mean, I when I read your story, I just prayed for you, and I knew God was leading you to greater things, and that's how I really see it. I just want to really quickly touch up on Richard Hart's case with the SEC. We shouldn't worry about that. He's gonna win. He's gonna put the SEC to shame. If anything is gonna be happening, it's probably gonna be the opposite. They're probably gonna be the one paying him. But we should be good on that aspect. People like Cleo, we need them. We need them in the world to uplift us. We need them in the world to like make us, kind of create an awareness for us that we know that okay, it's a yin yang world we live in right now. And the devil is everywhere right now, and it's just roaming around. But this year, it's a good year. I know it's been very difficult, but obviously during battles you get scars and stuff like that. But it's gonna be a good year, and I just want to say God bless each and every one of you. You guys should know that you're in the right direction. You're in the right part of history. Don't be scared. Do what you gotta do. But the main thing is that just be a good person. Because you don't want to get that karma. I believe in karma, like big time. You don't want to get that. If you don't get it this time, you get it next lifetime. So do what is right, and be a good person. Keep up the positivity. There's gonna be negative things. Use your discernment and use your awareness to know how to maneuver those stuff. But keep on doing the right thing. And I'm so glad. I'm so happy that you guys are here talking together. I mean, you can tell that the spirit in you brings people of high calibers together. So continue doing what you're doing, Rackham, and God bless you. And the sky is your limit, brother. Welcome back, bro. Take care.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you for the very kind words, and moving on that part of the statement you just made. I from my perspective, if you were to say, Christian, what do you think is gonna, and yes, that's my real first name is Christian, not Rackham, but if you were to ask me, what do I think is going to transpire? This is Rackham's opinion only. I could be the only guy in the room that thinks this. I think he's going to fight the SEC. I don't think he wants to settle because he wants to win. I think he wants the community, internal and external, to Pulsechain, to be other chains as well. Richard wants other people to see him defeat the SEC, and I think he's going to take it one step further. So you heard it from me. I think he's going to go after them for disparagement.
I wonder what your take is on this. So I noticed that there was not a single main, large or even medium-sized crypto news desk that wrote a single sentence about the hearing that just took place this past week. What's your read on that? Real quick, my opinion on it is I think it could actually be a good thing, right? So typically when the SEC feels like they really want to send a message and they want to like kind of show off how powerful they are, right? You actually do see articles written about it. So I'm wondering, like, what is your read that like crypto at large did not pick up on this hearing whatsoever?
If I can say this, it actually disgusts me. Richard has proven his credibility as far as his prowess, his business experience, his capabilities of expanding and innovating within this industry. I'm not trying to speak a whole bunch of hyperbole. That's really what I believe. I believe that he's still polarizing to a lot of people. That's, again, my opinion. But I'm going to say this. I believe, it's not that I think, I actually believe there is a lot more people that are on the sidelines or secretly involved that have a position with Richard in one of, whether it be Hex, Pulsechain, Pulsex, the Ink token, whatever it is. There are people that are more entrenched with Richard that are never going to tell you because they don't want to be told they were wrong, but they sure as heck don't want to miss capitalizing on it.
I think you nailed it. I think that's absolutely true. This is big for crypto. It absolutely affects Ethereum. What happens here is going to absolutely have an impact on how Ethereum's to be. You know, any potential cases that might arise with Ethereum, and we kind of know the dark side of Ethereum is actually much worse than anything that's happened with Pulse Chain. I'm wondering, like, so obviously, like Richard's been absent, like for the most part, right, as far as making any kind of like public live streams or would you encourage him to? I think the biggest loss has nothing to do with crypto as far as Richard not being kind of like present on the scene. I really see him more. I think we need as many people with good ideas and good morals in the public as possible. So like not even crypto related. Like we got to remember right before this case dropped, like Richard was sharing a stage with Elon Musk, and I kind of see him as that type of figure. Would you encourage him to be a little bit more open to the public? As far as just speaking his mind, not crypto related necessarily.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. You're the one that just nailed it with that comment. One of Richard's mistakes, and RG3 knew this because RG3 and I have talked about it several times. Richard never took advantage of having his generals. He had several generals, people that put in 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, irrelevant. There was there's various people in his networks that have put 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars into his networks. There's no doubt, and those are his generals, and he never really capitalized on that aspect of it, leaning on them, having them front run some of what he was going through, innovating, being maybe a segue into him and answering technical questions or other things that would have been beneficial for the expansion of the network.
Yeah, I just really like the. I can't help myself. I just love to know like what would Rackham say to Richard to encourage him to be a little bit more present, not crypto related, but as far as just like a person with good morals and well intentioned and certainly like a visionary mind to just kind of be a part of everything going on in the world right now.
Well, are you asking how I would infrastructure what's going on, or how he
Well, like
could kind of mitigate some of the past reputation that he has and fix it? I'm trying to make sure I
I
understand.
just mean like as a friend, like if you were just to sit down with them just as a friend, to be like, like, the world kind of needs you, bro. Like, they kind of they want to hear your ideas. Not crypto, like I said, not, but just as far as like, it would be good to have your voice out there in the world.
I honestly, I'm not that complex. I think the way you just said it was pretty revealing. It's just he does have something to offer. He is very knowledgeable. He has forewarned people on so many. I mean, how long do we have as far as a chronology of warnings across social media where he's told us to not get involved with all the various ones that went under, to include FTX and some of the other ones, but. I he's gagged right now due to the protocol of his attorneys and what's going on, but yet we need him to be in here and letting people know, hey, I'm still here. I haven't run off. You know, the OA is not being butchered and abused and this, that, and the other. It's I would just his community needs him. They were inspired by his vision. Everybody rallied and submitted under his vision, followed his protocol for what to do. So he's he very much needs to be back on social. I mean, I think a lot of the original OGs that were, pre-adoption amplifier and Hex that transitioned over to Pulsechain and Pulsex. Those that are still holding, I think over the next 3-4 months, you're going to start seeing some of them come back around if they haven't exited. And I just think that as soon as this settles with the SEC, however he does it, I think he is going to show back up. He's going to start his streams on YouTube and start conversing with. I have a problem when he debates with people as long as he keeps it calm and he corrects them from an educational stance and not standing behind a pile of Louis Vuitton gear, pointing at his watch saying blank, blank, blank. It's, this much money more than you're ever going to. That doesn't work. It's putting people off. But I've seen Richard where he's laughing and joking on stream. People are asking questions. He's answering it. He's educating. And when he equips his community like that, it's fantastic. We don't have a DAO. We don't have any kind of organization that orchestrates the ebb and flow of ideas and development on the network. So, in my opinion, it's like I originally said, he needs to come up with trustees, not that he has a board, but trustees, people that set protocol. They can communicate his wishes, his ideas, his concepts. They're towing the party line. They're doing exactly what he envisions for the network. And these are people that are vested, his generals like RG3 and other people. And there's some people that have a lot of money in this. And it's not that we're going to try to bend the network for our profiting, but we do want to protect what we've got. But I would say get him back on social media as soon as possible. As soon as the SEC stuff's cleared, he needs to get back on.
Rackham, quick question, and then I'm going to pass it over to Coach X. Do you think that, okay, yes, Richard is going for the glory, he's going to destroy the SEC, all those things. Do you think that if he does reach some kind of settlement agreement, ultimately, obviously there's going to be some fine where that's the negligible aspect of the settlement. Do you think they'd also issue him some kind of cease and desist where it's like you can no longer speak upon Pulse Chain or Hex or crypto in general? We want you out of the industry. Do you foresee that as a potential reality?
No, I don't.
Okay, it's bullish enough.
Rackham, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear
Perfect.
you.
Talking about PDI and being like one of the first individuals actually bringing it to light over a year ago, back in July of 2023. What's your thoughts and what's your comments of like all the centralized exchanges like Coinbase, Binance, Bitmart, actually having their forked over copies of like PUSDT, PDI, PUSDC? Do you think that in like PRAP Bitcoin and like PSHIB and everything, do you think it would be the community's effort to actually go out and kind of try to conversate with those individuals and actually making a prerequisite to become a part of the Pulse Chain ecosystem? Or do you think they're waiting for what is happening with the SEC currently?
I think it's a mixture of both, depending on which one we're talking about. I think that everybody that hears my voice right now that's on social media, X, Twitter, Facebook, wherever else at at Telegram and everything. We're all brand ambassadors. Do I think that there is truly real significant money on the sidelines? Yes, I do. Do I think they're waiting to see what happens with Richard? Yes, I do. Do I've watched people already pitching Armstrong, Coinbase, saying list us, and he clearly said on Twitter X. My apology, I keep calling it Twitter. Yeah, that's how long I've been gone. That he said it's an open submission process that anybody can do it. There is absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be picked up by a centralized exchange. I know that he's vehemently opposed to that, but I'm sorry. I like some of the bigger exchanges. It's a game changer for us. But to an extent, I think some of the gatekeeping initially helps us as far as, that. I've got mixed feelings on gatekeeping. I shouldn't have said I like it because sometimes I don't. It just depends on what I'm dealing with. Um, I I think once the SEC case clears up, do I think we're going to see other exchanges pick us up? I would put money on it.
For sure. Thank you for that. I was just wondering, what are your thoughts? Because the coins are already in their wallets. So it's just like, is there a way for us to kind of like get in contact with said exchanges or something like that? It's like, here is free money for you guys to have market makers and making fees and all that kind of stuff. So that's a net positive on their end and a net positive for the Pulsechain ecosystem. So it's just like, that's where I just want to bring up the discussion.
No, I think it's a great idea. I think people have already been doing it. I know RG3 was doing it covertly behind the scenes with some people. I've talked to one or two others that had sent an email. They had bi-directional communication going with said exchanges. Remember, we did get picked up by one or two exchanges, but then they delisted us once the Securities Exchange Commission, became actionable. So do I, whichever one is first after this gets clarified, closed, settled, however you want to call it. And again, I don't think Richard's going to want to settle with a fine. I think he wants to beat them. The one particular law firm, and I forget the name, check with Captain RG3 or RG3 Pirate. I would check with him. He knows the exact law firm that Richard's got, and they pulverize the SEC. I mean, the SEC doesn't even like arguing with them because they get destroyed. So he's picked the right people. I mean, obviously everybody knows he's using the same legal representation that Elon Musk was, almost the same exact ones. So it's I believe we are going to get picked up by some of the bigger players, some of the bigger exchanges. The barrier to entry right now, resistance to market, obviously is going to be people trying to mimic the protocol that Richard took to launch his network with a sacrifice. The SEC and other warranting agencies are going to change their protocol to make that more actionable to stop that from being used as the new workaround or new loophole or gray area. So it's going to become harder and harder to get these kind of market breaks that you're seeing. So right now, the people that have Pulsechain Pulsex, the Inc. token, if they're incentivized, if they're running validators and they're accumulating, or if they look, if they liquidate them daily for the profits. But the ones that got in at the sack rate, even as far down as you are from the original sack rate right now, they're not going to see another Pulse chain, and they're not going to see another Pulsex with somebody like Richard Hart. They're not going to see it again for a while, if at all. So they still fail to. A lot of people still fail to realize the position they're in. All they know is I've been waiting for 3.5, 4 years. I'm frustrated. I want to see liquidity. I want to see us at a minimum go back to the stack rate or the all-time high, and then they'll reassess what they're going to do from there. But you guys you're still in a very, very good position. I don't see Richard capitulating, and he wants to fight. That's why he did what he did.
But don't you think that is the better outcome, though? I'm a little bit confused about what your stance. You think that he should just pay the fine? Because I think that the better outcome would be for him to actually beat the SEC, right? For the whole community, like the crypto community as a whole.
We all hear we get rugged.
Are you not able to hear Thor?
That is weird. I can try to exit and re-enter. I I apologize. I'm not sure what's going on. No, I couldn't hear him at
Nah, it's not
all.
your fault, Rack.
It,
It's Elon's fault. We just gotta get on him about it. But I think he might be busy though. I don't know. So we'll see.
Yeah, because when I see Thor right now, it says listener. It doesn't say speaker.
So basically, and Thor, feel free to drop down and rejoin. But what Thor was asking was, he was saying that you had mentioned that Richard settling with the SEC is maybe what you would think would be the best course of action. And Thor was saying, wouldn't it be better for the overall crypto community for Richard to beat the SEC and set precedents, pro crypto precedents?
And Thor's absolutely correct. It's a far sheer. It's a better outcome to mine, but I'm trying to weigh out how long does that take. How long is the entire process? Because there's 30 days delay here, 60 here, 90 here for a follow up. We just nobody knows what's really going on there. Would I prefer to see him win and not settle? Absolutely, because his credibility would just blow through the roof at that point.
Right, that is completely valid and a win for Richard and Pulse Chain, regardless if you like him or not. It's a win for the entire crypto community. And so much of this, it's us versus us versus us versus them. And that's why crypto is constantly getting beat down because we're divided from within. And so if we can make it more of an us versus them being whoever's trying to stifle and suppress it, the industry at large would be stronger and more vibrant. So I can definitely see why a Richard Hart win against the SEC would not only be good for him to clear his name, but good for the industry. But then I can also see what you're saying there, Rackham, in that let's just get this over with and let's start building and marketing and making this specific ecosystem vibrant and viable.
And I'm torn. I'm just torn because it. Could you imagine the SEC comes after him, and they're working in tandem with the government of Finland or the governing body about the taxes and everything. What happens if just what does happen if he wins both?
Oh man, fuel up the rocket ship, I suppose. Because if he wins, then not only did he set precedent, his name is cleared and Pulse Chain is free to operate.
Let's go.
Now, let's for a moment consider the other side of the reality because not settling does also come with the inherent potential risk of losing. What do you think about that?
Um, it's like a criminal taking a plea bargain when he's getting sentenced. So I your statement it's justified. I can I just I'm not I'm just not seeing it, man.
I mean, especially from the feedback that we got after this hearing, it seemed like the judge was not very pleased with the SEC's position. And if you really understand, not you, but the system in general, really understands how decentralized protocols are operating, and if the system understands that they are actually the biggest harm to anybody in this ecosystem, Richard wasn't the harm. Pulse Chain was launched. I personally made a sacrifice. I expected it to go to zero. I was fulfilled when, or I was satisfied rather, when it launched and my sacrifice had the potential to become something. But I didn't bet my house money. I didn't bet my children's food money, right? This was a risky play. But then when we had this upward momentum, the SEC comes in and does what they do best and harms the investor. And not only do they harm the American investor, they harm the worldwide investor whom they have no jurisdiction over. So actually, the criminals here, you could argue, is the American government. The Stoner Cats, Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher, Chris Rock, Vitalik himself, making a cartoon and selling NFT tickets. The SEC went after them, won, got $20 million, dollars, and the Stoner Cats could no longer operate. Who won there? All the investors lost. The SEC was the only party that won. The SEC is the real criminal here, and they're running a farce business to steal money from projects so they can continue to run a business to steal money from people.
That's exactly it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's exactly what they do. I've used the word and I'll stick with the word. The SEC is executing extortion. Period.
Self fulfilling prophecy. executing extortion. I agree completely. Does anybody else have any questions, comments?
or anything that they can teach us at the same time.
Agreed.
So let me get this straight, Rackham. You don't see any path to victory for Richard against the SEC is what you're saying. So you would rather him just pay the fine and move on. Is that your stance?
Oh no, I think he's going to win. I just don't know how long it's going to drag out. Hey, settle this. Hey, there's a 90-day window. You know, the state versus Richard, however you want to say it. If they here's a $5 million fine and don't do another sacrifice, okay, and nobody could stop him from doing that. If he decided to settle, then so be it. Would I prefer that he doesn't? No, I'd prefer that he beats them, where there's no fine. The judge says you guys are done. Because I mean, it was pretty clear that the judge was very aggravated with what transpired in that courtroom. Um, you know, I I would I don't want to take 2 to 3 years for something that could be settled for $5 to $20 million. That's my stance, whether it's right or wrong.
Now, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but there was some rumors right after this all happened that, he would get the fine, pay the fine, but also it came with conditions, right? He had to sort of like leave the space, um, basically go underground and never to be seen again,
Yeah,
right? So I
but
I
see,
don't know if that's
they
true or
didn't,
not,
but
but
yeah, they didn't do that to anybody. I mean, they didn't do that to anybody else that I'm aware of.
sure, sure, and I don't know if it's true or not either, right? I'm saying what was sort of like circulating what people were saying, right? I don't know if there's any truth to that. Regardless, though,
So basically, a non-compete,
for
basically.
sure. But regardless, I think that a win, like if you're playing the long game, right? And for me at least, I'm playing the long game, and we're all in life, right? We're all gonna at some point, kick the bucket and eat the dust. And I'd rather. I think that if he actually gets the win, I think in the long term that will be a better outcome than sort of like biting the bullet and having like short-term success, so to speak, by paying the fine and sort of like towing the line. That's just my stance.
Yeah, I can see it going both ways, really. It's just I'm so invested in this aspect of crypto in the Richard Hart ecosystem that I just honestly, and I've been around the SEC for almost 25 years in various forms, coming out of business, having my history in business, doing. I was around when eGold was being ransacked by the SEC, and ICOs came out obviously. I mean, just decades after IPOs were what we used to chase. Hey, what's the next initial public offering? What's going to be the next up and coming, company? Who's disrupting technologically, as far as investment streams and stuff like that. So it's I'm honestly, I just like to see the SEC get its ass kicked. That's it.
No, me too.
Insert studio
Absolutely. I
crowd
think
cheering here.
Right on. You know what else? You know what else gets me is if you follow the average lifespan of the SEC attorneys or the litigators that are on staff there or going through the motions, they all follow the same protocol. They all do the same thing. They want to make a name for themselves. And what do they all do 7 to 20 years into their career at the SEC? They leave and they join a law firm that battles against the SEC. They all do the same freaking thing.
I can actually attest to that in my own personal experience. One of the core attorneys on our legal team is an ex SEC official who worked under Commissioner Hester Peirce, and now he is anti SEC. So I can attest to that.
Yeah. What is the latest thing? Because now I'm asking the question, if you wouldn't mind. What's the latest bit of information that we do have per the SEC and Richard Hart? What's the latest thing that we as a community do know?
So we know that the hearing happened on Halloween, and the community that was there and reporting on it, they walked away with the sentiment that the judge was more pro pulse chain than they were pro SEC. Now, if we're being objective, we are pro pulse chain, so you have to weigh out if there's some bias there. But I did hear a lot of objective feedback that I felt like was objective and unbiased. But the SEC that does potentially have grounds on a point that says that Richard was still marketing the sacrifice after the sacrifice was supposedly over by way of people, even though he put on the website, hey, stop sacrificing, it's over.
And he said it in videos
He
too.
did, but the point that the SEC brought up was that even though he put it out there, he also said, hey, people who sacrificed after the deadline, we're going to find a way to take care of you. They had a quote from Richard about it. And so
And that's true.
yeah, so that's the one big point that I think the SEC had sticking power on. But beyond, beyond the nitty gritty of how that day transpired, we're just waiting on the judge to make her ruling on if the case will be dismissed or not.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, that's are they allowed to make that claim? Yes, they are. I don't know what your personal opinion is. I mean, it's kind of weak to me that point, but I completely get you. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I find it interesting that that is a sticking point when the sacrifice existed at all. Like, why is it okay that the sacrifice existed and that was marketed, but it's not okay that it was marketed after the thing he wasn't supposed to be doing ended? So I feel like if that is their biggest sticking point, again, I don't know the ins and outs of the legalities on why or why not.
Right, and that's what I'm thinking as you're talking. I'm like, I know of no statute of limitations applicably legally where that would have absolutely any effect whatsoever. But that's just weird.
I think the 2 points to my understanding, and I can connect you with a gentleman in the community. His name, he goes by Nuclear Herbs. He's the gentleman that everybody in the community is looking up to as the wisdom on all of this. He has a lot of experience with legal
Nice.
stuff, and he's been tracking everything intimately. But it seems like the SEC is trying to stick Richard on 2 points to ultimately make their case. And point number one is jurisdiction in the United States, right? Because that's the only way that they can really have relevancy to target him. And B is, did he set expectations on profit and product? And I think so there's two classifications. There's expectation of profit and expectation of product. And it's basically inarguable that he set expectations of product. We all had expectations that Pulse Chain was going to launch. He said as much. And so by him actually launching Pulse Chain and launching Pulsex, they are now arguing in defense of he did not commit fraud. So expectations of product, that removes fraud off the table. But now expectations of profit is the thing that they're still fighting for, right? Which would be an unregistered security. He would pass, fail the Howey test.
Okay, and that's the part in the court case where they were talking about having to dust off their books in relation to the Howey test.
Exactly. And it is gray, right? There is good points on both sides for expectations of profit, and that's why there's even a fight to be had in general. But it seems that Richard's attorneys did a good job of making the case, and even to my understanding, did a good job of making the jurisdictional defense case that this is not targeted to United States investors, although they did participate. So it seems like Richard's attorneys are doing a good job.
I got to pull it down from the docket, but when's the next time they're reconvening?
I think at this moment in time, it is unknown. The general sentiment is we should hear something within the next 60 days, but I don't think the actual date and time is known.
Okay, so 60 days to 90 with a 30-day extension if they need more time.
Probably something to that effect, yes.
I think at this point they're just waiting for a decision as to whether or not this will get dismissed. I think a lot of the case will probably get thrown out. I don't think it's going to go through in full. But they're going to find at least one. You guys got to understand a couple of things here. There's a reason the SEC drags everyone into that one court, right? And granted, this judge seems to be at least neutral, right? You could have gotten a bad judge. This judge seems like relatively a good judge. But we talk about like precedent a little bit. They're very careful with the way they're coming out with these opinions and rulings that they're not actually setting any precedent that's reusable for other cases. And you can see that an example from any of the XRP stuff. And so to get to a point where you're setting precedent, you're talking years down the line. And yeah, it's not that it shouldn't, it absolutely should. But because they want to continue to prosecute crypto companies, they're very careful to not set any precedent in court. There are opinions, but it's a shit show. Like the SEC is a completely corrupt organization. If you really ask anyone who's worked for them or been around, illegal like corporate law and all that stuff, and they'll tell you that the SEC has never actually helped anybody. Like they want to tell you they're protecting consumers. That's never happened. They've never done that. Nobody could ever make an argument that anything the SEC has ever done has actually helped like a retail investor or that class. You look at the FTX case. You know who got paid? The liquidators. The customers didn't. You go look at the balances. Everyone thought like there's like $12 billion going back to all the customers that lost out on FTX. Yeah, until the liquidators take their cut, which like took out I think like 75% of the pool or something. So yeah, unfortunately, yeah, this court is liable to pretty much do anything. I think they'll have a much smaller scope of what the attorneys need to focus on. And I pinned it up top in the nest if you guys want to look at the lawyer. So Michael Liftick has actually been in front of like I think it was a congressional committee as far as kind of speaking to like crypto, the SEC, like pretty relevant stuff. So yeah, I mean this guy is he's a stud. He's definitely a rock star. Richard's in really good hands. Unfortunately, you know how the legal system works here. I mean, they're liable to do anything. So yeah, really looking forward to that decision. And I think it'll be net positive. I just want to point out last thing is that guys, none of this stuff actually affects Pulse Chain on an ongoing basis at all. Like secondary, like everything on Pulse Chain ever since it was like went live, and none of that is in question at all. There's nothing about secondary trade, nothing. This is all about origination. And if there was an investment contract initially produced by Richard to the people who participated. So that's really what this is about. Like on an ongoing basis, Pulse Chain is unaffected. Like nobody can tell me otherwise. Except recently, the SEC has started to try to come after to try to reclass the secondary market. Like this is the big attack. So they rolled back, like they took one step back where they had to throw out the term crypto asset securities. They had to admit that they just kind of made up the term and it doesn't mean anything. And even if you look at Richard's case, that's written in there like at least 8 or 9 times, right? So they had to get rid of that phrasing because the judge kind of ruled on it. Or they had to actually withdraw it because the judge was like, "What is this? Like, what does this actually mean?" Like, you know what? We don't know. We kind of made it up. So they kind of took a step back there. But now what they're going after is secondary. I don't think they'll be successful at it, but that's sort of their next threat vector. But as it sits right now, like on an ongoing basis, Pulsechain is actually completely unaffected by this case. I mean, Richard is, but sentiment is, but as far as like the technology continuing to, as far as producing blocks, nothing is going to stop that.
Right, but it is stifling adoption.
Yes, I would agree that it is stifling adoption, even from a builder standpoint. We as a team, we're always engaging with other builders on other networks, trying to bring infrastructure over to Pulse Chain and just onboard other builders and protocols into Pulse Chain. And a lot of the kickback and rejection that we get is because of Richard Hart and because of the SEC scrutiny. So once this is settled, once it's over, once it's positive, I think we will also see not just more retail adoption, but adoption from other builders and infrastructure, which is important because if you onboard somebody like, let's say Uniswap comes over and starts supporting Pulse Chain, that's way bigger than onboarding one person. You onboard millions of people in an instant, right? So onboarding the builders is actually easiest way to onboard the most people with the least amount of effort?
You know, people are a little bit hemmed up about like there being that one bridge. Even though if you actually look at the implementation for the bridge, and then you go look at I don't know if you guys know, but BlackRock deployed 24/7 U.S. Treasury redemption protocol on Ethereum, and it's constructed exactly the same way, right? So if it's like good enough for BlackRock, you know, I'm sure it's good enough for you, but you know, the bridge is a bit of a sticking point. And the real solution, Rockham, I'd love to get your opinion, your take on this. I think that if the market won't come to Pulsechain, why don't we bring Pulsechain to the rest of the market? Meaning that, like, you know, if you could buy these assets on Solana or on any other network, right, without needing people to take that step of bridging, because it's a sticking point. We can't fight that. Like, if people are doing good on Solana, they're not going to go and bridge the Pulsechain. They're just not going to do it.